Hello.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
I am well. I'm well. The weather is becoming so much better in London.
Isn't it? Although the light is a problem in my office. The light is always a problem in my office. Hang on a second. Ooh.
Oh, where's she gone? She was there.
And I'm back. And I'm back. I'm not sure that did much, but anyway. I look a bit pale, don't I? I look like I'm kind of some kind of a ghost.
No, I always said you had a little bit of that Tilda Swinton quality, except the
Oh
BAFTA. But
gosh, I wish. I wish I'd have her money and her height. Man, I'd love to be that woman's height.
is she tall?
Oh yeah, she's like a 6-footer.
I had no idea.
Yes. Who wouldn't want to be a 6-footer? Oh, look, and there's the sun. Right, move over to the side. Right. Okay, so we've got a couple of folks with us already, but we're going to wait a little bit and see if we get any others. Let me just do that with my camera. And I'm just also going to check that we are working properly on LinkedIn.
And I will check if the X stream is also streaming well. Yes, it is. It is streaming well.
Awesome. All right. So we've got a couple of you folks with us at the moment. SR71's back. Hello. It's good to see you
Yes.
again. Let's just wait a little bit and see if a few other folks show up, because it always takes people a little bit of time to show up to these things. So what's today's date? April the 30th, isn't it?
Yes, it is April the 30th, and it's the date when the SR-71 will try to persuade us that he is a supersonic jet and not a droid. But I still remember. I still remember that story.
Right. So, yeah, we look like we're live on LinkedIn as well. All right, then. So, should we do the spiel and introduce ourselves, and then hopefully we'll have a few extra people arrive?
Yeah,
Gosh, I
super
really do
cool.
look
Do you want me
forward.
to do the spiel?
You do the spiel.
All right, so here goes the spiel. All right, folks. So, welcome to Day One Careers free Amazon coaching weekly with Gigi, the amazing Gigi, the one and only Amazon interview whiz, and myself, Evgeny. We're both the co founders of Day One Careers, and we're here to answer all your questions about behavioral interviews at Amazon. So, if you guys are here, you probably know that Gigi and I were both former Amazonians, we're both former senior marketing leaders, hiring managers, interviewers, and also in Gigi's case, she's also a former bar raiser at Amazon. So we, at some point in time, both realized that folks who invest a lot of time and effort in interview preparation end up doing really well in interviews, and much better than those who don't. And it's especially important that especially important if you have a very strong and very relevant profile to the Amazon job that you're applying for. You do need to have those interview skills. So that's why Gigi and myself created this business, and we've been running it for I think 2.5 years. And so in this show, we try to answer all your questions about Amazon behavioral interviews. When I say behavioral, that's because Gigi and I were not technical. So if you have any questions about system design or solving algorithmic problems, I guess we'll have to direct you to other resources that other candidates have vouched for. But anything about your upcoming behavioral interviews, or anything else around that, we'll be very happy to answer. So please add your questions to the chat where folks are already beginning to add the questions to. We're going to bring them up on the screen and we're going to try and answer them. Just to make sure that everyone gets the best value out of this session. If you guys have a very generic question, like tell me, like I don't know, tell me some tips, guys, because I have an interview with Amazon next week, then we would say please review all the content in our YouTube channel, because we've got plenty of general, broad Amazon interview advice there. But if you have something a bit more specific about your situation and a more specific question, we'd be very happy to answer. And lastly, I think by way of housekeeping, if you guys have a long question, that's absolutely fine. Post it in, but please number your post, because there is a limit to how many characters the chat can take in, and so you'll be forced to split your question into a multi-part message, just like a Twitter thread. Just tell us one of third, two of third, so that we can fish your question out and hopefully answer it. Anything you'd like to add, Gigi?
Nope, nothing to add. Should we get rocking and see what happens?
Yeah, go for it. Maybe you can pick the first one because I was not looking at the questions while I was doing the spiel.
Neither was I, but let's have a go. All right, so this could be a multi-parter. Right, so MW4724. Oh, by the way, when you put your question down, just kind of introduce yourself a little. Hi, this is Joe, and I'm in Texas or whatever. It's just nice, like people knowing people rather than just random usernames. Not that we don't like random usernames, they provide us with much entertainment, but still nice to know where you're coming from. So MW4724. I work at Amazon currently. You're an L6 senior program manager. Recently applied for an internal position. Met with the hiring manager end of January. Oh, that was a while ago. First week of April, had your phone screen. Then went through a 4-person loop, including a BR. Okay. 4-month process. I have so many questions. Having just read that, I have so many questions. Okay. Where's the second part?
There is no second
There's
part,
no second part.
but I'm
Okay.
guessing
MW.
he or she applied for an L7 role, so they had to bar raise them.
Well, no, but okay. All right. Give us your second part. Right. Sorry, that was bad. Let's move on. But it wasn't bad, but it's
Let's
just
try again.
lacked a second part. All right. So let's move on. Okay. Okay. What if you get down an answer? Oh, I think I know where this is going. Right. So, hello, KD Chesser. What if you get down an answer and retreat to then course correct to answer the question directly? What is your view as a bar raiser? Okay, so I'm going to slightly rephrase this. I think I know what you mean, but I think what you're saying is what happens if you start to answer a question and then realize that perhaps you have chosen the wrong example and then you course correct and maybe answer with a different example. What's my view is that that's exactly the right thing to do. The interview process at any company, in theory, isn't intended to be testing your interview skills. You're not interviewing in order to be a professional interviewee. You're interviewing as a mechanism for the company to be able to extract data in terms of your skill for the particular role that you're applying for and your cultural fit to the company. So, in theory, your interviewee skills are not what this is all about. And therefore, if the primary objective is just to get the right data out, then it doesn't matter if you start talking, then you say, oh, actually, I think I've chosen the wrong example. I'm just going to start again with a different example. Because if you're starting again with a better example than the prior example, then the interviewer is going to get the data that they need and everybody's going to be happy. So it's absolutely fine. Actually, I think it's preferable that candidates do that rather than just keep stumbling along in an example that both they and the interviewer probably know was a very poor choice. Okie dokie, gonna pop you back in, KD Chesser. Would you like to pick one, Yevgeny?
Yeah. There's a question from Paula. And the question is, I recently landed a job at Amazon, but it's a contract role. I'm curious about the possibility of converting it to a full-time position. So the possibility is there. Nothing is stopping you or Amazon from from hiring you in a permanent role. Now, if you want to convert your current contract position into a permanent role, it's a conversation that you need to have first and foremost with the person who manages the team. So or otherwise, the person who would be the hiring manager for this role, because sometimes business realities will dictate that it is possible to convert this role into a permanent position. Sometimes it is impossible to do so. In any case, from what I understand, and Gigi, please correct me if I'm wrong, but even if they were to convert your position into a permanent role, you would have to reapply for that role. The only difference is, from what I understand, there's no phone screen, so you go straight to loop. But Gigi, can you correct me?
That is correct. It would be the same kind of process from a loop point of view. So you'd have a bar raiser and a normal panel size for the level that you're applying for. Evgeny, you're right. There's no phone screen, and that's really the difference. In terms of, are you asking, do you have an increased probability of being hired from a contractor rather than from an external candidate? I don't know the actual statistical data on that. Theoretically, you should have a higher probability of success because you've been working inside Amazon and therefore you're already familiar with the leadership principles and you've been working in the context of the leadership principle for 6 months or a year, and therefore you're likely to understand what they're looking for better than an external candidate, and you're more likely to have very clear examples of yourself demonstrating what they're looking for than an external candidate. But just being a contractor, data performance aside, is not going to increase the probability of you getting hired. It's your experience as a contractor that creates that increased probability. Okay,
Indeed.
shall we pick another one
Go
then?
for it.
Adisha. Okay, that looks like a two-parter. Okay, let's just pull this up then. So I interviewed for an AWS position with the hiring manager phone screen and then got selected for on-site. Okay, but the position went on hold. The recruiter said they're trying to coordinate an on-site for the same role in another team. Okay. I haven't heard back from the recruiter. Do you think it's difficult to schedule on site directly with other teams given you are approved by a hiring manager of another team? All right. So, okay. So the context is then that the role that you're applying for got put on hold. Looks like that there is I'm not quite sure whether there is definitely a role in another team or whether you're speculating that they're looking for a role in another team. I'm not quite clear on that point in your question. Then, assuming that there's definitely another role in another team and they are passing you over to that, the question then becomes, do I think it's difficult to schedule an on-site directly with another team given you're approved by a hiring manager of another team? Okay, difficult. Two different interpretations of that. There's difficult from a scheduling point of view, and then there's a probability that the other hiring manager will consider taking you direct to Loop on the say so of a hiring manager from a different team. Um, Too many variables, I think, here. Some hiring managers don't have to just take what another hiring manager gives them. Another hiring manager and a recruiter can go to that hiring manager and say, look, this hiring manager's been through with them, was impressed, is happy to move them to on site. Do you want to take them on site? Some hiring managers will say, yeah, that's fine, because maybe they know that other hiring manager. They know that the role that they were hiring for is incredibly similar to the role that they're hiring for. The leadership principles that they tested in phone screen are the leadership principles that they would have tested in phone screen. And maybe, yes, they would move them on, but they're not obliged to. So it's equally possible, although not, I can't articulate probability, but it's equally as possible that the other hiring manager will say, well, actually, I would prefer to phone screen them again because of X, Y, Z reason. So I can't put any data on it. I can't put any statistics behind it. All I can say is no hiring manager is obliged to take somebody else's phone screen one past candidate and drop them straight into Loop. Is there anything else you would add, Yevgeny? It was a
No,
little bit ambiguous in there for me.
no. I think you answered as precisely as you could, given that ambiguity in there. Let's keep going. And Adisha,
Okay.
if you have any clarifications, just feel free to drop them, and
Yeah, if I
we'll
misunderstood you or got any follow-ups, feel free to drop the question in further down.
yeah. Right. So here's one from Lewis, and the question is: do I
Hang on,
have
before we do the question, we have to recognize the amazing profile picture.
the cat? Yes.
That is a cute cat. Sorry.
It
You know
looks
I
like
love a good
it looks
profile
like
picture.
Garfield a little bit, I think.
Garfield's orange. What are you
No, I
talking
know, but
about?
it's the expression. It's the it's the happy, well-fed face. Like mine.
Okay.
Anyway, let's keep going. So the question is, do I have to worry about the scope of my story being too big when I'm interviewing for an L4 job? I'm gonna go with no, but I'll caveat it. I'll caveat it with the following. So theoretically, and I'm saying theoretically because that's kind of how Amazonian hiring managers are meant to behave. I can't vouch for them behaving like that 100% of the time. Theoretically, you're not meant to interview candidates for an L4 that you believe can raise the bar to an L5 or an L6, because that becomes a misleveling exercise. And again, theoretically, this isn't something that should go ahead. And I have seen offers that weren't given to candidates because they were misleveled. So no, they weren't misleveled because they went into a loop, for example, for an L5 role, and then at the end of the loop, they were deemed to be too senior. So it did happen, not often, but it did happen. It also happened quite a few times where the candidate was clearly too senior for the role, but the hiring manager was desperate, so they decided to loop the candidate. The candidate smashed through the loop and got hired, and the bar rates are okayed. So that does happen. All I would say is just be very careful with the roles that you interview for, and I guess have a conversation with yourself around. If you are overqualified for an L4 role, and yet you want to get into Amazon, and you're okay to take the L4 role, do you think you will be sufficiently motivated? And in this case, if your answer is yes, and assuming that they don't spot the fact that you're too senior for an L4, and they'll give you the role, no, there is no issue with the scope of your situations being what they are. So yeah, that's what I would say. What would you say, Gigi?
So I think it just boils down to, well, what choice do you have? Because it's almost impossible to accurately calibrate your answer to the level, because there's no clearly cast iron definition of exactly where each level stops and the next level starts. There's a whole bunch of high judgment that goes into deciding whether someone is raising the bar at X level and Y level, and that's always moving because the bar is always raising. So there's actually not much else you can do with any accuracy in terms of throttling back the complexity of your story. So I think, to Yevgeny's point, the more important thing is at the top end of the funnel, make sure that you're applying for roles that are relevant for your experience, not too junior, not too senior. And then when you're in the interview, present yourself as well as you can possibly present yourself, because if you are throttling yourself in a somewhat imprecise way, what you might find yourself doing is actually missing out on the job at the level below that you think you can actually get hired at, simply because you've misjudged what the scope and complexity of an L4 level role actually looks like.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Okay, I'm going to turn out this light. I look like Casper.
The friendly ghost.
Yes, at least Casper's friendly. Oh, I still look like a ghost anyway. Obviously put the wrong color makeup on today. Right. What's the next one?
SR71.
Okay, is it true that resumes are shortlisted by recruiters based on matching job titles to your resume? I'm having a problem with program manager title. It doesn't match any title on my resume. So I would argue that any recruiter worth their salt is going to look a lot further past your resume than just your job title. It would be a very lazy recruiter who's only looking for exact matches in job titles, not least because job titles in Amazon actually quite often don't reflect job titles externally in other organizations. So whatever issue you're having, I can't promise you this is the case, but whatever issue you're having, I doubt very much it's around job title matching between job description and your resume. It's about the content in your resume, your achievements and your achievements and your scope of responsibility. Would you say anything other than that, Evgeny?
Fundamentally, no. I would just make an observation that I don't know whether this is coming from this observation or not, but there's this not fraudulent, but there's this strange line of thinking that you can find in various different articles about how to write your perfect resume, and essentially some of these fake experts they instruct candidates to slap the same title of the job to the title of the resume in and as the candidates are instructed to tailor quote unquote
Mm.
each resume for each job application. Yeah, just don't do it. And no, I'm with Gigi. I've never had a recruiter just send me resumes where your last job title or your profile title was the same as the title of the job that I was hiring for. So don't worry about that.
I mean, I suppose the only place where having an exact match for a job title is helpful is perhaps in LinkedIn, where recruiters are actually going out and sourcing candidates because they're doing Boolean searches using keywords to try and source candidates. But if you're submitting your resume directly, then I keep my original position.
Cool. All right. What do we have here?
Amir,
Yeah, so this is, I'm not sure I'll be able to answer this one. What level is data center security manager? Mid senior role, Germany location. No idea. No idea. Do you have any
um,
idea?
I'd assume it was an L5 just because it's got manager at the end of it, data center security manager. If we took data center security away and put marketing, then you and I would immediately leap to that's an L5. So just based on the nomenclature of the job title, I would say L5, but can't guarantee that that is the case.
No.
Pretty confident though, I have to say.
Right, I'm not gonna do a cop out thing. I'm just gonna take another one. Right. Question from Vinayak. Nice jacket. Yeah, blazer.
Looking sharp. Yeah, looking sharp.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, have a loop in 2 days. Can I take a couple of minutes to scribble down my story after the interviewer asks a question? Should I leave camera on during this time? Let me just make sure that it's not a multi-parter. Nope. The
No,
next
it's
ones
just
are.
three times the same question.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of scribbling down your story after the interviewer asks a question, I'm going to go with I wouldn't do that if I were you, unless you can do it in just a few seconds. I would recommend instead to write the question down. Underline the key parts of the question, make sure you understand the question so as to help your brain to come up with a relevant story and also to reduce the chances of you actually taking off responding to a question that the interviewer never asked. If I'm thinking about having to jot down the entire structure of the story, I'm thinking you're probably going to take a bit too much time. Again, all of us are different. I would not be able to do it in just a few seconds. And while leaving the camera on during this time, presumably, if we're talking about your loop, the camera will be on during all of the time. So I would say if you do take our general advice and write the question down, then yeah, the camera would be on, but it's absolutely fine. Just look down and write it down. So, but Gigi, what would you recommend? Would you say it's a good idea to produce the story outline?
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I'm still struggling with the light, everyone. It's just a bad time of year for where I am in my house. So I do recommend to my clients when we're doing one-to-one support that they jot down 3 or 4 bullet points that demonstrate the key actions that they took in that story as it pertains to the keywords in the question. And the reason why I suggest that is what sometimes happens is candidates have prepared a particular story with a particular focus on action points that relate to a particular leadership principle. And then the question is asked of them, and they end up using that story, but for a question that they never intended to use that story on. and then they start to tell the story and they forget the question and they just blur the original version of the story, and they forget that what they need to do is actually slightly reshape the story and focus on different elements from an actions point of view. So I always coach candidates to do exactly as Yevgeny said: write down the question, look at it, underline what you think the key words are, pick the story in your head that you think you're going to use, and then just write down 3 or 4 bullet points that speak specifically to the key actions that connect to the question. So that's not writing a full story, absolutely not, but it's 5 seconds to effectively write down those bullet points. So broadly, Yevgeny and I are aligned. For me, it would just be those additional bullet points that I think are quite helpful for people to keep them on point for the story rather than defaulting to the original version of the story if they have slightly had to reshape it.
Well, there you go. Do you want to pick the next one?
Oh yeah, sure. So there's just a couple of comments from SR71, but I think we've covered off that. Okay, that's the same question again from Amir, so we're going to jump that. Okay, so Adisha, did I cover this question off? Was Adisha the one who asked us about? Yeah, so we covered this off, Adisha. No one is obliged to take you directly to on-site because another team have chosen to move you onto on-site. So it's possible you might have to do a phone screen one again. No obligation. Okay, that was a cop-out, so I'm going to pick another one. Okay. KD Chessa. Okay, what if you bomb the screen interview due to too much prep and data, more data in your heads? Haven't heard back. Is it inappropriate to ask for another 1 hour intro call? Okay. So I'm not going to speculate as to why you think you bombed it and whether having data is going to drive someone to bomb an interview. It's all slightly hypothetical and speculative. So let's just kind of park that. So the key question here is, if you bomb the interview, can you ask for another one? No, it's as simple as that. Like, the interview is your opportunity. If they offered do-overs, then there would be no progress because you would keep doing do-overs for candidates who are going to keep failing the interview. So no, I'm sorry, you do just get one bite of that cherry. Now, the good thing is that if you fail phone screen, that you don't go into a cooling off period, which is a 12-month moratorium for applying again. So that won't happen to you. So if you bomb this one, then don't worry. There are plenty of other jobs out there at Amazon, and you will be free to apply for a different role. Just do your due diligence. Try and really think about what it was that led you to bomb the interview. I know you've said here too much prep. I think it's very difficult to bomb an interview with too much prep. I think when people talk to me about too much prep, actually what I think is that they've locked themselves in to a particular answer, a little bit like I described a minute ago, and they're unable to be agile with how they answer questions because they've literally just locked an answer into their head and that's the only answer they're going to give. So I don't necessarily believe in being over prepared and that can possibly cause someone to fail. I think what you can be is overly rigid in your preparation. I think that's the best articulation of it. But no, I'm sorry, no do-overs. You want to take the next one, Yevgeny?
Yeah.
We're
So
rocking. We got loads of people here today. Oh,
yeah. Let's make sure. Yeah, let's go and let's keep answering. Okay, so question is, how would you recommend I choose stories for bad judgment? My recruiter encouraged me to only paint myself in a good light and talk about negative results.
isn't that a bit of an oxymoron? How can you have a bad judgment but not paint yourself in a negative light?
It is an oxymoron if you take both parts of this question at face value. But if you don't, then it isn't. Because I think what happens here is, and by the way, this is how I would normally respond, right? But I think what's probably happening here is this whole idea of, well, for a complete outsider, like, why would Amazon be interested in hearing about you committing errors in judgment if they want to hire you? Isn't this a bit counterintuitive, right? Or is it a trick question? Like, do you need to somehow kind of talk about things going wrong, but then somehow not? And the reality is, and this is where I'm going to bring it down to Amazon actually not trying to make this a trick question. And that is, when they're asking you for a situation where you've made an error of judgment, you need to tell them a situation where you made an error of judgment, and the sole act of having an error of judgment that will paint that particular part of the situation in a negative light, of course, because in an ideal world we would all be making correct judgments all the time. Why is Amazon asking for situations like that? It's because they want to understand how quickly and how deeply you learn from your mistakes, and how quickly you apply the learnings to your work that happened after the situation took place. And if you can demonstrate that you've learned profoundly, you've learned deeply, and you've applied the learnings to subsequent situations where you didn't commit the same mistake, then that will actually paint you in, I'm going to say, the good light, because that's effectively the behaviors that they're looking for the I write a lot leadership principle. I can't necessarily comment on the guidance that you're being given by the recruiter, because I disagree with that guidance. Well, how would you wrestle with it, Gigi?
It's an oxymoron in the sense of the guidance given by the recruiter, because what the recruiter is saying is only talk about negative results and paint yourself in a good light. Well, if you didn't make any of the bad judgments and the only bad thing about it was the negative result, then you're not answering the question. So I'm going to say the same as you, Yevgeny. I don't understand that guidance. I completely agree with you in terms of how you go about answering the question of bad judgment. I'd like to build on it slightly in terms of being very specific about the weighting of the story. When candidates talk about making bad decisions, those that don't do so well spend 80% of the narrative talking about the bad decision and only 20% of what they did afterwards. And sometimes they don't even give you the 20%, they just tell you about the bad decision and end it there. What you want to do is flip it on its head and spend only 20% talking about the bad decision. Usually, I would constrain that within the situation. That's where your bad judgment happens. And then the task and all of your actions and your results section is what you do as a result of recognizing that bad judgment in order to recover the position. Yeah. And yeah, can't comment on what your recruiter said because that just doesn't make any sense to me either. Shall we move on to the next? Oh no, we're not going to move on to the next one. You know what time it is, Yevgeny.
It's time to party.
It's
It's time to
party
party.
time. Okay. Right. So, folks, this is the crazy time of the session where we do something really weird, and people who think we're weird leave, and those who appreciate our quirkiness stay. So, obviously, we put an enormous amount of effort into this channel with our lives and the video content itself and some of the free content that we give away, PDFs and blah, blah, blah. Obviously, we do that because we want to help. And it's beautiful when I get messages like I do pretty much every day of people saying, "Thank you so much, I've got the job." But we do ask something in return of you, in return from you. Sorry, poor English. And that is to offer us some engagement on our content. And by engagement, I mean the act of giving a video a like or writing a little comment in the video. The reason why we want that is that that is an indicator to YouTube that it is good quality content and that they have accurately served that content to someone who finds it useful and meaningful. The more that happens, the more YouTube will prioritize our content over some of the other far less, well, I'm going to call it inferior content. Come on, I'm going to be bold. I'm going to say inferior content, of which there is copious amounts on YouTube around Amazon interviewing. So, whenever you watch any of our videos moving forward, please do just spend the half a second it takes to give it a thumbs up, or maybe the 10 seconds it takes to send us a little message. And as regards this live, we're going to spend a few seconds showing you an entertaining and slightly bizarre little video so that you can then give this video a thumbs up, and then we will move on to I'm hoping that I'm getting the bubble, but I'm not getting the bubble. Oh, I am getting the bubble. And then we can move on. So let's pick a good one for today. I will say, folks, this is a little bit loud. I didn't do well with the audio management of this when I uploaded it. So if you have headphones like me, you might just want to pop them off your ears ever so slightly, and then you can enjoy a Mexican fiesta with Yevgeny and myself. Here we go.
Please like the stream now. Please like the stream now. Please like the stream now. Please like the stream. 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 Like the stream.
So it doesn't look like we've lost anyone, so that's always good.
That is, well, we never lose anyone after
We
these
do, I'm
entertaining
telling you,
bits.
Yevgeny,
Come
we
on.
lose people. That's the point of the show, where people just think, right, those two are completely nuts. And off they
Exactly.
go. Right, go on. Is it your turn to pick the next one?
I think so.
Okay, and I'm going to mess around with my curtain again.
Okay, cool. So, who is the next?
David Laviolette.
David La Violette. Okay, cool. So, connecting from the greater Seattle, Washington. Big up to Seattle, Washington.
Yeah, love it.
Can you give me an example of what a case study might look like for at Amazon for senior vendor manager role? LPs, earn trust, and deep dive. Do you have any idea? Because I have no clue what those case studies include.
Yeah, so they're generally, I mean, I can't get super specific, so I can just talk to you in general, because of course they all come up with their own individual case studies, but it's generally as you would imagine, which is you're presented with the scenario about working with an external client. You're presented with a problem or an opportunity, a statement of something that's going on. You're presented with a whole bunch of data, and you're effectively asked, okay, what are you going to do? How are you going to solve this problem? And using the data and using your knowledge based on the information that they've given you about the vendor, they'll probably give you some background on the vendor. They might give you some information about their profitability. They might give you some information on their history with Amazon, but a whole kind of backstory associated with that vendor, the situation. And then they'll ask you, okay, how would you manage this as their vendor manager? And it's kind of as you would imagine it to be, really.
If you, and this is public information, if you research the job of the vendor manager, and a lot of the job of the vendor manager has to do with negotiating with vendors, not just in your annual cycle of negotiations, which all retailers go through, but also the ongoing one. So if I were you, I'd expect an element of negotiation to be as part of that case study. But that's it. I think Adisha has a clarification for you, Gigi.
Sorry, and I've just put something in my mouth. We do this at tea time for me, and I cannot cope until the end of the day, until dinner time, until I've eaten something. So sorry, everyone, me munching away. Would a hiring manager prefer someone to give an official phone screen with them than having someone straight to loop? Adisha, honestly, there's no single answer to this, because there are so many variables involved. If it's a hiring manager that you know really well and you trust their opinion, then you're going to not waste your own team's time doing another phone screen again, and probably take them straight to on-site. If it's a hiring manager of a team you've never heard of, and from what you understand, that team doesn't do exactly what your team does, you're going to be less confident that you're going to be getting the right candidate through to loop on-site. And therefore, you might want to do the phone screen again. There's absolutely no single rule here, Adisha. I'm sorry, I wish I could tell you exactly, but too many variables, too many humans.
Too many variables and too many humans. Next one. Right, so Alejandro has a loop in a few days for an L6. The question is, should I ask to schedule all of them in one day, or in 2 different days? I'm going to go with it's entirely up to you. It makes no difference to the outcome of the interview or how your interview is assessed and graded. It literally has to do with what works best for you. And we've known candidates and we've coached candidates who were swearing by the by the advice they'd give to all of the other candidates, just get it all done in 1 day. There are candidates who prefer to do it in 2 days. It's literally whatever you think works best for you. Do you have any more tips other than that?
No. I think people ask this question because they think there's some kind of implication on the Amazon side of the choice that they make. So your point about no, it makes absolutely no difference to Amazon at all in any way, shape, or form which way you choose. Therefore, just choose the one that suits you best is the advice.
It took off during COVID when all of the loops went. There were no on-site loops anymore. I remember reading some sort of philosophy about it because for some reason some candidates were feeding back that having 5 or 4 back-to-back video interviews was a bit too much, so they decided to split them. Whether that actually works or makes it easier, I think it's very individual dependent, so it's great to have choices. There you go.
Okay, so let's just pick this one back from Amir. Okay, I worry about negotiating my salary, especially fearing that I might ask for too much. If I do ask too high salary, could it lead me to be eliminated as a candidate? So from a process perspective, no. So it's up to you at the end of the day whether you take the offer that Amazon is going to give you. Amazon will not choose to remove a potentially great candidate from the selection process because that candidate has asked for more money than they're willing to pay. What should happen is if you are clear with your recruiter that your level of expectation of compensation, if it's above what they're willing to pay or what above the band, then they should tell you. And then it's up to you to make a decision as to whether you want to move forward with the application or not. If the recruiter hasn't done that and you make it all the way through to loop, and then in loop, the recruiter pipes up and says, oh, the only problem is they're looking for more than we can pay them, which, by the way, isn't a great situation for everyone to find themselves in, but it's happened to me as a bar raiser on numerous occasions. The answer to the recruiter is, we want to make them an offer that we are willing to make them within the band, and then it's up to them to decide whether they do or don't want the role. Amazon is not going to back out of selecting an amazing candidate if that amazing candidate is going to take a lower salary. So ask for what you think is fair. Obviously, make sure you've done your homework and that you understand what the market rate is in your area. Ask for what you think is fair. And until Amazon comes back and tells you they can't pay you what it is that you want to be paid, then you should keep moving on the process.
Agreed.
Okay. Oh, our favorite question next.
Yes.
Anyway.
Can I repeat a story? Obviously not for the same person in the loop. So, and our favorite answer is, yes, you can, but don't repeat exactly the same story verbatim. And to elaborate on that, so as I'm sure you can relate to, when you go through life at work, your situations when you solve problems, they're often multifaceted. Not all of them, but you've got plenty of multifaceted situations where if you really look at what was happening in reality, there's probably more than one leadership principle that you were demonstrating. In other words, behaviors might have been exactly the same situation. You had to invent something and it was invent and simplify, but you also needed to negotiate with a colleague who was maybe resisting to what you were proposing, and that lends itself to earn trust. But it's the same kind of a situation. So what you can do is you can take that common professional context and then split it into 2 separate stories. These stories will be joined at the context part because the beginning of the context might be the same. It's the same project or the same sort of timeline, the same set of stakeholders. But the specific focus in terms of the problem you needed to solve and the actions you took to solve that problem is something different, something focused on a different leadership principle. So from that perspective, yes, repeat those, because effectively it creates another story that seems to be that is just connected to the same situation. But don't repeat stories verbatim, because every story needs to be selling a different set of behaviors. And if you are referring to exactly the same situation and chunking it into multiple stories, I would limit it to maybe 2 per situation, unless it was like a very, very long project that you can then split into phases and chunk it into, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 stories. But other than that, yeah, you can repeat situations, but not stories, if that makes any sense. Anything you'd add?
No, that's a really good way of saying it. Repeat situations, but not stories. Okay, so moving on then. So SR71 is doing well in the online assessment a prerequisite to moving to the next stage? Yes, because it's a filter stage, like every other stage in the interview process. So my understanding of how the online assessments work, and this may have changed since it was initially implemented. This is the information that I have from when it was originally implemented. But essentially, there is a back end scoring of how you perform in online assessments, and it's then broken down into buckets. I believe I can't remember if it was 3 or 5 buckets at the time. Anyway, it's broken down into buckets. People who are in the top bucket automatically go through to a first phone screen or straight to loop, depending on the team's process. People in the next buckets are given to a hiring manager to consider whether they want to take them to phone screen, and people in the bottom buckets are rejected. So yes, your performance in the online assessment does drive the probability of you moving on to the next stage, as your performance in every single stage of the Amazon interview process does drive whether you're likely to move to the next stage of the process or not.
Cool.
Okay.
Right, so I think this is a continuation of a previous question. So, okay, so maybe I didn't really bomb the phone screen, but I haven't heard back either way if I'm moving forward. Interview was Friday. After today, it's been 2 days. Should I reach out for an update for 2 and 5? So if they didn't get back to you 2 days, 2 business days, 2 working days after you've had your phone screen, then yeah, it's absolutely normal and okay to follow up. Just keep it profesh, keep it polite. But yeah, no one's going to. No one's going to have a problem with you following up and you asking questions and following up, as long as you're being polite, as long as you're being tactful. Doesn't have isn't going to annoy anyone. So yeah, do follow up. If they don't respond again, then maybe give it a week and see what happens, because oftentimes there are some big logistical issues within Amazon. But look, just be confident that if they haven't gotten back to you within 2 days, within 2 business days from a phone screen, there are different internal mechanisms that will make life to the hiring manager slightly peculiar. Let's put it that way, if they're not coming back to you. So they will come back to you at some point. Anything you add, Gigi?
Nope, nothing. Okay, so I picked the next one. So Zen nights. I mean, who doesn't like a Zen night? So hi from the Midwest in the US. Very cool. 2 questions. One, I have run on in answering questions before and lost the question. Yeah. You and many, many other people that I have interviewed. Is it okay if I type the question I'm asked? Should I ask them if it's okay? So we 100% tell everybody to write down the question, because so many people, if they don't write down the question, forget what question they're answering. And trust me, there's nothing more annoying than a candidate just disappearing down some rabbit hole, and as an interviewer realizing that you've just wasted 10 minutes listening to something that doesn't actually answer the question that you asked. So we would say absolutely yes, write down the question. I wouldn't suggest that you have to ask them if it's okay. I would reverse it and say, I'm just going to write the question down briefly and make a statement about it. I don't think you need to ask anybody's permission, but just so that they know that you are actually going to spend a second or two writing down the question. But I don't know if you were here a few minutes ago, Zen Nights, when we were talking about it. But our recommendation is write down the question and then underline the key words in the question, because there will be keywords in the question that are indicative indicative of exactly what the interviewer really wants to hear about. So something like, tell me about a time where you needed the cooperation of someone and they didn't want to give it to you. The key words in that question are cooperation of someone, didn't want to give it. So you know the vast majority of what you talk about in your narrative needs to be focused on getting the cooperation of someone who didn't want to give it to you. That's not just the context of the situation, that actually has to be the content of the story. Okay, pop him back in.
Excellent. Here's a question from Ayan. Can I repeat a very strong A-star story already told in a phone screen again during loop interviews? So, yes, you can, but we strongly recommend that you advise your interviewer that you've already shared this story during the phone screen and just check with them if it's, if it's okay for you to progress. In most cases, from what candidates are telling us, it worked out fine, and the interviewer just said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." But in some cases, the interviewer might prefer that you produce a fresh story. So, with that caveat, my answer is yes. Anything you would add, Gigi?
No, other than say I'm one of those horrible interviewers that would much prefer to hear a fresh story than hear a story that I've already reread, because I would have read everybody's notes from their first round phone screen if I was the hiring manager or if I was the bar raiser. So to Yevgeny's point, there are plenty of people out there who were not like me and who felt quite comfortable with candidates using exactly the same story. But what can I tell you? I'm a hard-nosed bitch. All right, moving on. Okay, Zen's going to ask us the next question later. Okay, I think this is just the same. This is the same question, isn't it? I'm having an L6 interview coming up. Can I use 3 stories I've used during the phone screen during the loop? Okay, we just answered that. Sorry, I'm going to add a little caveat to that. I would be even less comfortable if I'm seeing the same stories. If it's like one story that you used in the phone screen and you brought it into loop, yeah, okay. But if you're having to go back to 3 stories that you used in the phone screen and bringing them all back into loop, then I'm thinking, oh, come on, let's get some fresh ones here. Now, obviously, it depends on how many interviews you have. Yours an L6 loop, so you're going to be having 5 or 6 interviewers. So you're going to be covering off 15 to 21 odd stories. So 3 maybe wouldn't kill me from a bar raiser point of view to see them come back again and again. But the less you repeat, obviously, the stronger you look as a candidate. Okay, I'll pick another one, Yevgeny, because that one was a bit of a cop-out. Sorry. Oh, not sure when the live stream ends, but wanted to say thank you. Oh, you're welcome. Oh, I love messages like this, folks. Thank you so much, KD Chess. I really, really appreciate it. We finish in 7 minutes. Let me just pop you back in and just do a little bit of touchy-feely stuff. I appreciate it, and I know Yevgeny does so much when people send us messages on LinkedIn or on YouTube, just telling us how they've done and showing us some appreciation. Not that we want kind of, stroking the pussycat, as I say, but we put a lot of effort into this and we genuinely do it. Of course, we want to pay our bills, right, Yevgeny? You want to pay your bills, right? But to be able to pay your bills and do something that genuinely helps people, either to land this job or land future jobs, is an absolute massive privilege. And we get such pleasure from getting messages from you folks and updating us on how you're getting on and your success stories. So feel free to bash things down to us on YouTube, send us messages on LinkedIn. We will always message you back, and we will always message each other and tell each other that we've got those messages, because it matters a lot to us that we can genuinely do something to help people and make a difference. So schmaltz over. Let's move on to the next one. So this is still me because I keep picking them. Sorry, Yevgeny. How does a writing assignment work? Can I use Google or ChatGPT to help shape the answer? So I'm only going to tell you the official line, right? I'm not going to tell you anything other than the official line, which is the writing sample is there to assess your ability to write good narratives. All decisions, or most decisions, like 99% of decisions in Amazon, are based on a written document. And therefore, the writing assessment is done in order to assess your ability to write a coherent document. So you just need to write a coherent document. It's a pass-fail exercise. It's not a scored exercise, by the way, so I'm just using this hypothetically. But if it was on a scale of 1 to 10 and pass was 5, it wouldn't make a difference whether you got a 5 or a 10. You've still passed, right? So I would say don't over agonize on the writing sample. Make sure it's clear, concise, coherent, no weasel words or squirrel words, as I like to term them, accurate, specific data points, all of those types of things, and you will deliver a solid piece. It does not have to be a prize winning piece of journalism. What's that famous American prize that you get for journalism?
Pulitzer.
Pulitzer. Thank you very much. So you don't need to write a Pulitzer prize winning piece. It just needs to be a solid piece that shows you that you can write and string together a coherent sentence. How you achieve that is up to you. Right, Evgeny, now you can take one finally.
All right, here we go. So another one from David. Tell me about a time when you failed. How's best to answer when you have no specific situation to refer? Did you have something? Do you have competing deadlines which I failed to meet one of the deadlines? Would be a good example. So my response to you would be, and this is my response to, and our response to a lot of candidates who come to us asking exactly the same question. How do you answer the failure question? This gets around, this is one of the examples, by the way, of the content that you find online, which is utter rubbish, right? Because Amazon doesn't ask you a question, tell me about a time when you failed. I know there are websites that tell you that Amazon asks this question, but that's not true. They don't, because this question is useless to Amazon. It doesn't test anything. So Amazon asks questions and might, let me just backtrack, not just Amazon. An Amazon interviewer might select a question which tests you on a particular leadership principle that has what we call a negative way into that leadership principle. An example of that would be, tell me about a time when you thought that you were going to miss a deadline or miss or not deliver on a commitment, for example. Or tell me about a time when you had an error of judgment. These are all various different questions that if you, again, to an untrained eye, you might just think, well, these are all just failure questions, but they're not. They have a very specific purpose behind them, and I will take the I write a lot one. So I write a lot leadership principle, for example, has positive ways in. Tell me about a time when, let's say you needed to make a decision where no good data was available. So, for example, something like that. Or tell me about a time when you made an incorrect decision or a bad decision. So that's a negative way in. Both these questions, they test for behaviors that map to our rights a lot. One of them has a positive way in, which is the strength of your intuition. You're being able to use your intuition as a data point in making decisions. The other one is about how do you learn from incorrectly made decisions in order to improve the quality of decision making further. So that's why I would say you just need to clarify what that question exactly is, but there's no such thing as a pure failure question. Gigi, do you have any extra thoughts that you would add?
Nope. And I've lost you. I've lost the screen.
Who did you lose?
You. I can't see you anymore. There we go. You're back. Sorry, everyone. Too many screens.
Thank
Right.
God.
Okay, sorry everyone, deeply unprofessional. Do apologize. Right, so we've got like 30 seconds left. So I'm going to pick one more question, and then folks, do not disappear because we're going to give you an incredible freebie. And hang around because Yevgeny's got a good narrative around this incredible freebie, but it does take a while. So make sure you stick around. So one more question. Oh, okay, cool. So final one from Amir. Hopefully we've given Amir good value today. So is it normal that a hiring manager may conduct a second interview during the final? Oh, right, I understand. Yeah, second interview during the final loop. Thank you. And you're not sure how to identify the bar raiser HR Wednesday. Okay, yes, it is absolutely normal. In fact, it is the best practice to see the hiring manager again at loop. So if the hiring manager did your phone screen 1 or your phone screen 2, you should definitely expect to see them again at loop, because after all, they're going to be hiring you. So they are going to want to be extra confident that you can actually raise the bar. So that's very normal. I'm not sure how to identify the bar raiser. HR won't say. Don't worry about it. You don't need to know who the bar raiser is. It doesn't make any difference if you know who the bar raiser is. No one has ever been able to swing an interview by being amazing with the bar raiser and not being amazing at every single other interview. So it does not matter who the bar raiser is. Do not concern yourself. Go into the interview assuming that everybody is the bar raiser, and then you can't go wrong. Cool. So now, shall we do our amazing giveaway? Let's just pop that back in. Let's get our banners up and make sure I've got the right one. There we go. No, I did it wrong. There we go. So,
That's
folks,
the banner.
if you head to, actually, shall I do this? You did the intro, so let me do this one. If you head to that link, you will find some amazing free things that we have for you. No reason not to take them. So the first thing that we have for you is a what we call the Amazon interview tool pack, which is full of sample questions. They are not exact questions from the Amazon interview question bank, because that would be breach of our contracts, but we have created our own question bank based on our own experience and our knowledge of the leadership principles. So you can go and get that totally for free, and that can help you with your practice. Second thing you can get from us for free is a taster course of our special source methodology for understanding the leadership principles and what the interviewers are looking for. We've basically created a learning model based on the different lenses that you can look at the leadership principles through. We call them facets. It isn't an Amazon term. It is a learning model that we've created, but we're giving you this course that is based on customer obsession, and you can learn what the facets are from customer obsession. You can learn what the interviewer is looking for when it comes to customer obsession and the type of behaviors that customer obsession demonstrates. And then there's a little mock interview at the end, me interviewing me, and you can see how the whole thing comes together. The third thing that we're going to give away to you for free is, if you take either of those two, it gives you automatic access to our incredible community of other Amazon candidates. So you can join our community, you can make friends, you can do mock interviews with other people in the same situation as you. You can also use our awesome chatbot. So we have trained a ChatGPT custom chatbot on all of our YouTube content. So if you don't want to spend forever going through every single YouTube video and staring at my face and listening to my poor jokes about my family, etc., you can just go to the chatbot and ask the chatbot the question that you have, and it will give you all of the insight and advice that you would have got from me based on the YouTube content. I think that's it, isn't it, Yevgeny? There's nothing else for free. As if that wasn't enough, folks. So look, we are convinced that we are offering the best quality, most freely given content available on YouTube around Amazon interview. There's a whole bunch of insight that's on offer from us that you absolutely will not find anywhere else, even in terms of the Amazon interview preparation content that they provide, which is great and extensive, but there's a level of insight that we offer that I guarantee they do not. So please go and take it. There's absolutely no reason not to. All right. So on that note, folks, we are done for today. We will be back again next week, same time, same place, same dreadful lighting for me. And for those of you who have interviews coming up, fingers crossed, we hope it goes really, really well. And if you have questions, you can always feel free to just drop us a note on LinkedIn or on YouTube, or if you're streaming through Yevgeny's X, there as well. All right, folks, take care. It's great to see you all.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks for making questions. Bye.